There's something profoundly unsettling about the experience of being drawn toward another human being in a way that feels less like choice and more like calling. It's not merely infatuation. It's not simple desire. It's deeper. It echoes somewhere in your spirit, a magnetic alignment that defies pure logic and refuses to be dismissed by casual reasoning. You feel it. And the feeling doesn't just visit you, it begins to dwell. This experience, confusing as it may be, is worthy of deep reflection. Because in some cases, it's not just a feeling, it's direction. But here lies the challenge. Our culture has trained us to see attraction as a fleeting emotion, a chemical reaction, or the result of timing and exposure. And while those elements do play a role, they don't explain everything. And they especially don't explain why some individuals emerge in our lives not as background characters, but as central figures we feel we're meant to engage with on a higher level. So what do you do when your heart insists that there's something more to a connection than the eye can see? What do you do when logic gives you no reason to pursue someone, and yet your inner compass keeps turning back toward them? Begin by listening, but not blindly. You listen with scrutiny, because there's a line between emotional longing and divine guidance. It's a line worth learning how to walk. To understand whether you're being spiritually drawn toward someone special, you must first understand the architecture of meaning. Meaning is not accidental. It's structured. Your psyche is built to respond to patterns, to recognize potential, and to align with purpose. So if a particular person stirs something within you, especially in a way that's persistent, reflective, and not merely lustful or reactive, there's a chance that this feeling is anchored in something significant, something potentially sacred. But significance comes with responsibility. You cannot long for a meaningful connection without preparing for the weight that it carries. Relationships that stem from spiritual calling demand more from you. More honesty, more vulnerability, more alignment with truth. They don't just ask you to fall in love. They ask you to rise in love. And rising is painful. It's hard. It forces growth. But that's precisely why it matters. Before you draw conclusions about this person in your heart, ask yourself, have I ordered my inner world enough to trust my interpretation of emotional signals? Because attraction filtered through unresolved chaos can masquerade as purpose. Pain, fear, insecurity, they all distort perception. And so the first step in interpreting whether this draw towards someone is authentic is by cleaning your lens, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. Only once clarity within is achieved can you begin to decode the potential significance of someone else. You will then ask, do they align with the direction of my higher self? Do they pull me toward order or chaos? Do they mirror my potential or my brokenness? These are not romantic questions. They are philosophical and psychological ones. And they are necessary if you want to avoid the traps of projection and wishful thinking. Still, even after doing this work, the pull may remain. And here is where patience becomes a tool of discernment. Because a genuine spiritual connection will not demand haste. It will not thrive in the rush of impulse. Instead, it will reveal itself slowly and withstand the passage of time. False pulls fade, true ones deepen. So if the sense that you are being drawn towards someone persists, if it remains after the passion settles and the logic reappears, then perhaps it's time to explore that feeling with humility and discipline. not by forcing connection, but by observing your life carefully. Watch how your paths cross. Watch how your growth aligns. Watch how the person challenges your ego and awakens your conscience. Sometimes you're not pulled toward someone because they will complete you, but because they will confront you. They may not give you peace, but they may activate the war within that must be fought so that peace can eventually be built. In that sense, the spiritual significance of a person isn't always about comfort. Sometimes it's about calling, and callings are often uncomfortable. You must also be willing to accept that the pull you feel might not be me. That's hard. But if the feeling came from a higher source, it was never wasted. It taught you something. It shaped your inner world. It prepared you for a future that still awaits, even if the person at the center of the feeling isn't meant to walk it with you. Don't chase validation, chase understanding. Don't seek possession, seek clarity. And in the pursuit of clarity, you might discover that the presence of someone in your life, or even just in your heart, had a purpose far beyond the outcome you imagined. Maybe they were there to awaken a dormant part of you. Maybe they were the mirror that helped you see yourself. Maybe they were the question, not the answer. But in the end, the question matters. Because when you learn to question what pulls you, instead of being passively drawn, you begin to walk not just toward others, but toward truth. There's a temptation to believe that what we feel is accidental, that the moments of emotional intensity we experience, especially when they relate to another person, are just blips of neurological chemistry or the byproduct of unresolved desire. But that explanation is far too shallow, and it fails to account for the depth of certain experiences that shake you to your core. The truth is, not all feelings are fleeting. Some linger, some grow, and some press against your consciousness in a way that makes it impossible to ignore them. These are distractions. They may very well be signals, and in that case, they deserve not to be dismissed, but examined with care. When you feel a sudden or consistent emotional draw toward a specific individual, it's not always rational. That doesn't mean it's not real. There's a major difference between irrationality and a higher form of logic that our limited minds can't immediately decipher. Often, we experience profound feelings before we understand their meaning. Meaning reveals itself slowly. But the pull you feel may be the beginning of that revelation. It's a nudge, a quiet beckoning toward something that requires your attention. And the danger is in assuming that just because it isn't explainable, it must not matter. That's wrong. The most significant truths in your life usually don't arrive with clear instructions. They show up in fragments, emotional fragments, psychological insights, unexpected clarity, and you're expected to assemble the meaning from within the chaos. This is especially true when it comes to relationships. Sometimes a person walks into your life and triggers something you didn't even know was sleeping. Their presence unsettles you in the best possible way. They challenge the emotional order you've grown comfortable with. Not by doing anything dramatic necessarily, but by being who they are. You begin to feel exposed in ways that make you confront your own potential. And more than that, you begin to wonder if there's something larger at work. Some spiritual orchestration that brought them across your path. Now, to be drawn to someone is not rare. People fall in and out of attraction every day. What makes it worth studying is when that attraction persists beyond the surface level, when the pull isn't reactive, but reflective. when it doesn't just appeal to your desires, but to your values. That's when you know something deeper is in motion. Because feelings rooted in purpose feel different than those born of infatuation. They carry a kind of weight. Not a burden, but a significance. They make you pause. They make you ask better questions about who you are and who you're becoming. And this is where the concept of alignment comes into play. If you are being drawn towards someone in a way that persists, you must ask yourself, what part of my life is this person resonating with? Is it my need to be seen? Is it my hunger to connect? Or is it something else? Something more profound, like the sense that their presence awakens parts of me that I have suppressed? Could it be that they mirror the direction my life is supposed to go? Here's a difficult but necessary truth. Attraction rooted in spiritual alignment doesn't always feel like excitement. Sometimes it feels like responsibility. It's the recognition that this person doesn't just stimulate you, they stabilize or stretch you. They don't just impress you, they awaken you. And when that happens, it's a signal that you must not ignore. Because it may very well be that your heart is responding not just to their physical presence, but to what they represent. They symbolize something essential, perhaps a version of your future, or a missing element of your growth. You see, the heart doesn't always operate on the timelines of the intellect. What your mind cannot yet articulate, your soul may already sense. And so when that deep inner pull surfaces, it's not a weakness, it's a clue. It's the start of a journey you're meant to pay attention to. But attention must be accompanied by discipline, because not all emotional pulls are healthy, and not every connection that feels intense is meant to be pursued. That's why discernment is key. And that discernment begins by examining yourself first. Before you project meaning onto someone else, ask whether you've been living in alignment with your own truth. Because until your internal compass is set, any direction you follow will be tainted by distortion. When your life is guided by order, when your principles are intact, when your purpose is defined, when your emotions are tempered by wisdom, then you can begin to trust the signals your heart sends. You can begin to notice patterns that weren't obvious before. You'll see how timing, values, emotional resonance, and mutual growth all converge in ways that seem too intentional to be mere coincidence. And that's when you begin to understand. Maybe this pull you feel isn't just about romance or longing. Maybe it's about alignment with a future that's calling both of you. But here's the caution. Don't confuse intensity for meaning. Meaning doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers through calm consistency, mutual growth, and a shared trajectory of purpose. If someone is in your life and your emotional reaction to them leads you not into obsession but into introspection, if it makes you want to improve, to prepare, to become more capable of love and less reactive in fear, then it's worth your attention. Because that kind of draw is rare. And when it happens, it may be less about what they are offering you and more about what they are calling out from within you. The most important connections you'll ever experience are not always based on ease. They're based on meaning. And meaning will always ask something from you. It will ask for growth. It will demand honesty. It will confront you with the need to evolve. So the next time your heart feels pulled towards someone in a way that doesn't go away, don't rush to conclusions. Sit with the feeling. Study it. Work on yourself. Align your life and then see if the pull remains. If it does, maybe you've stumbled upon something real. Not just emotionally real, but existentially significant. And that's worth the courage it takes to find out what it means. When people talk about love, they often reduce it to a feeling, an emotional high, an internal spark, or a wave of euphoria that rushes in and convinces you that someone else is the missing piece of your life. That feelings are unstable. They rise and fall with time, mood, hormones, and even the weather. What's often left out of the conversation is the role of responsibility in relationships, especially in those that feel spiritually significant. When you feel deeply drawn towards someone, that draw isn't just about receiving something. It's also about being called to give, to carry, to become. Responsibility is the foundation of meaningful connection, and without it, even the most intense emotional experiences will collapse under their own weight. True love isn't just a bond between hearts. It's an alignment of lives. And when lives align, they don't do so effortlessly. There's friction, adaptation, sacrifice, and decision. If you feel that you're being pulled toward someone, the real question is not just how they make you feel, but who you're willing to become for the sake of that connection. Are you willing to shoulder the emotional labor that real intimacy demands? Are you prepared to be honest even when it's uncomfortable, to be patient when things get difficult, and to maintain integrity when temptation or frustration invites you to give up? The draw you feel towards someone might very well be a reflection of a deeper calling, but callings always come with responsibility. You don't get to carry something sacred without proving you're capable of honoring it. And that's the mistake so many people make. They think the feeling of attraction justifies impulsive action. They believe that desire is enough to build something lasting. But it's not. If you're not willing to accept the responsibilities that come with what you desire, then what you want is not love. It's fantasy. Responsibility in love means that you don't approach the other person as an object to fulfill your needs. You approach them as a subject, as someone with a complex world of their own, someone you must learn, support, and protect. That requires effort. It requires emotional discipline. It requires a commitment to act in a way that is beneficial not just to you, but to the growth and well-being of the other person. This means love, at its core, is a moral enterprise. It's not just about how much you feel. It's about how well you treat, serve, and uphold the other person when it costs you something. This is why many people flee from relationships the moment they become difficult. They were never in love. They were in love with ease. And when ease left, they left with it. But ease is not a prerequisite for depth. Often, it is the struggle that tests the sincerity of the connection. You don't know how deeply you love someone until you've had to carry the weight of their pain and your own without running away. And if you're not prepared for that kind of responsibility, you're not prepared for real connection. When you sense that someone is spiritually significant, the first thing you must ask is whether you are emotionally mature enough to honor that significance. That means being accountable for your words, for your reactions, for your healing. That means refusing to make the other person the center of your validation. It means standing as a complete person so that what you offer is not neediness, but strength. Responsibility also involves timing. Sometimes you're drawn towards someone because they are part of your journey, but you haven't yet developed the internal structure to handle what they bring into your life. And if you pursue that connection before you're ready, you won't grow into it, you'll destroy it. This is why self-development is not a selfish act. It's an act of preparation. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're building the kind of character that can carry responsibility without resentment. That's what relationships need. That's what love demands. It also requires you to recognize that even when you're pulled towards someone, it doesn't guarantee a perfect outcome. Responsibility isn't about control. It's about care. You cannot force someone to feel the same depth that you feel. You cannot demand reciprocity just because you're willing to give. But what you can do is ensure that your approach to love is grounded in integrity. That means you don't manipulate, you don't beg, you don't mold yourself into who you think the other person wants. You show up fully, honestly, and with the awareness that real connection is not possession, it's partnership. Responsibility asks you to make space in your life, not just for another person, but for their emotional reality. Can you handle their silence without panicking? Can you navigate their bad days without making them about you? Can you encourage their dreams even when they scare you? These are the questions that define your readiness. Because no matter how much you believe someone is meant to be in your life, if you cannot take responsibility for how you show up, you will lose them. Not because fate was against you, but because you weren't prepared for the weight of what you asked for. So the next time you feel that deep pull, stop romanticizing it for a moment and start asking hard questions. Who do I need to become to walk beside this person in truth? What weaknesses in me could sabotage this connection if left unchecked? How do I contribute to a bond that strengthens both of us instead of one that leans on dependency? These are the questions that matter, because the answer to whether you are being pulled toward someone special cannot be found in how intense your feelings are. It can only be found in how prepared you are to take responsibility for those feelings. In the end, love is not something you fall into. It's something you rise to meet. It demands the full strength of your character, the maturity of your actions, and the humility to know that every connection worth keeping must be earned, not with charm, but with consistency, care, and responsibility. That is the price of anything meaningful. And if you're willing to pay it, you may find that the person you're drawn to isn't just a source of desire, but a mirror showing you what you're capable of becoming. Most people believe that clarity in relationships arrives through grand gestures or perfect timing. They wait for signs in the sky or exact words to confirm what they feel. But in reality, clarity is often birthed through internal struggle. The heart does not always reveal its truth in a moment of peace. It often exposes its deepest convictions when you're in the middle of tension, confusion, or longing. When you feel drawn towards someone and you don't understand why. That lack of understanding isn't a mistake. It's part of the process. Because before you gain clarity about them, you are being invited to gain clarity about yourself. Attraction is not a standalone phenomenon. It emerges from within you, shaped by your values, your wounds, your past experiences, and your current level of self-awareness. So when you feel emotionally or spiritually pulled towards someone, the pull may not be about them, at least not entirely. It may be about what they reflect back to you. Perhaps they embody something you've been searching for. Perhaps they activate a part of you that's been buried. Perhaps their presence stirs a desire in you to rise higher, to become more. And if that's the case, then the feeling is less about chasing them and more about listening to what your internal world is trying to say through the feeling. And this is why introspection is essential. Without it, you will attach meaning too quickly. You'll romanticize a person instead of understanding the lesson they're pointing to. Not every connection is meant to become a relationship, but every meaningful pull is meant to become a mirror that reflects who you are, who you're not, and who you're becoming. And that is why the emotional draw you feel isn't always about possession. It's about awareness. It's about awakening. It's a signal that something inside you needs attention, that there's an emotional or spiritual message buried within the attraction. You must ask yourself, what part of me is being awakened by this person's existence? Is it hope? Is it a forgotten dream? Is it the courage to love again after heartbreak? Or is it something more confronting, like the realization that you haven't grown into the kind of person who could sustain a relationship of that depth? That's the kind of clarity that most people avoid because it doesn't feel romantic. But it's the kind of clarity that transforms you. It's the kind that prepares you to love in a way that isn't just passionate, but wise. Clarity rarely comes from waiting passively. It comes from confronting your own motives. Do you want this person because you're ready to give, or because you're desperate to receive? Are you attracted to their essence, or are you projecting your unmet needs onto their presence? These are hard questions, but they're necessary. Because emotional attraction can lie. It can disguise desperation as destiny. It can take loneliness and dress it up as love. And unless you learn to separate truth from emotional intensity, you will continue to chase illusions. The most profound form of clarity comes when you realize that what you're drawn to might not be a person, it might be a lesson. That doesn't mean the person isn't real or important. It means their presence is a vehicle for your growth. And if you miss that, you'll keep getting drawn to the same kind of person over and over again, not because it's fate, but because you haven't yet learned what they were meant to teach you the first time. But let's suppose the pull is genuine, not rooted in trauma or fantasy. Let's say it's grounded, persistent. It doesn't go away even when you've taken the time to reflect. In that case, clarity might look like a slow unfolding, not a dramatic realization, but a quiet confidence. You begin to see their character, not just your chemistry. You begin to value their mind, not just their beauty. You begin to appreciate their presence, not just what they do for your ego. That's when you know the attraction is maturing into something sustainable. And that kind of clarity only appears when you've done the internal work to recognize what love truly requires. It's important to resist the urge to demand certainty too soon. The heart doesn't work on command. Just because you feel a strong pull doesn't mean it's time to act. Sometimes the feeling is just the beginning of a journey, a prompt for you to pay attention, to prepare yourself, to observe without rushing. Clarity comes when you no longer need the person to validate what you feel. You've made peace with the pull, not because you've been answered, but because you've become grounded in your understanding of why you feel it. And ironically, that's when you're finally ready to know whether the connection is meant to be pursued or released. Clarity also asks for humility. You must be willing to be wrong. You must accept that what you feel might not be reciprocated. But even in that possibility, there's something to gain. Because the real gift of clarity is not getting the person. It's becoming the kind of person who can experience deep emotions without being controlled by them. It's knowing that your value isn't diminished by what doesn't work out. And it's trusting that any genuine connection that is meant to flourish will do so in the right time and under the right conditions. Never through force and never through fantasy. So the next time your heart is pulled towards someone, don't rush to label it. Sit with it. Study it. Let it teach you about yourself. Let it refine your understanding of love, timing, readiness, and emotional maturity. And above all, let it lead you inward before it leads you outward. Because only from that place of inner alignment can true clarity emerge. Clarity that isn't dependent on outcome, but rooted in truth. Clarity that honors both the feeling and the person, without turning either into an idol. Clarity that gives you peace whether the connection deepens or passes you by. And in that peace, you'll finally be able to see not just the person you're drawn to, but the person you're meant to become. There comes a moment in life when you start to realize that certain experiences are too aligned to be written off as coincidence. The timing is too precise, the emotions too deep, and the connection too specific. It doesn't make sense in a purely logical way, but it resonates in your soul as something that was meant to happen. When you feel that undeniable pull towards someone, and it happens at a time when you are starting to grow, heal, or shift your direction, it's worth considering that you're not just meeting a person, you're meeting a moment in which your life and theirs intersect for a reason far greater than casual attraction. And when this happens, it's often a sign that something is being orchestrated beyond your immediate comprehension, that there's alignment at work, not just between two people, but between timing, purpose, and emotional readiness. Alignment is not something you force. You don't chase it, manipulate it, or manufacture it, and then you respect it. You start to understand that what is meant to be in your life will never require deception, confusion, or chaos to maintain. It will challenge you, but it will not destroy you. It will stretch you, but it will not cause you to shrink. The presence of alignment is often marked by peace, not a peace that eliminates all conflict, but a peace that remains even in the face of uncertainty. Peace that says, this connection means something, and I don't have to destroy myself to figure out what. When your life starts to align with someone else's journey, you begin to see how growth is no longer isolated. It becomes shared. Your steps start to complement theirs, not because you are the same, but because your differences now serve a higher rhythm. You learn from each other. You challenge each other, and you find that the connection doesn't distract you from your purpose, it deepens it. This is one of the clearest signs that what you're experiencing isn't just emotion, it's alignment. Because true alignment doesn't pull you off course, it sharpens your focus, it clarifies your values, and it inspires you to rise, not regress. That's why you must pay attention to more than just how someone makes you feel in a moment. You must also look at how they fit into the broader narrative of your life. Are they helping you grow into your potential? Are they supporting your pursuit of truth, discipline, and meaning? Are they challenging your weaknesses in a way that invites growth, not shame? These are the signs of someone whose presence is aligned with your path. And these signs rarely arrive with fireworks. They arrive with consistency, emotional safety, and shared purpose. But alignment is delicate. It's not guaranteed to last forever. Just because it starts strong, you have to nurture it. You have to protect it from your own fears, impatience, and unresolved wounds, because even the most divinely timed connections can fall apart if they are not handled with care. If you try to rush the process, if you let insecurity override communication, if you place expectations where understanding should be, you will break something that was never meant to be broken. Alignment must be honored with maturity. It requires the ability to wait, to listen, and to grow at the pace of something sacred. This is why alignment is not about perfection. You don't have to be flawless to experience it. You just have to be honest. Honest about where you are, what you're carrying, and where you want to go. And when someone else meets you with the same level of honesty, that's where something truly special can begin to form. Because then you're not just connecting out of fantasy. You're connecting with full awareness. You're choosing to show up not as who you think they want, but as who you really are. And when they accept that version of you, when they support it, when they grow with it, that's the evidence of real alignment. Timing plays a massive role in all of this. You may meet the right person at the wrong time, and that alone can alter the trajectory of a connection. But even in those situations, there's meaning. Sometimes alignment doesn't mean permanence, it means preparation. That person may not stay in your life, but their presence can launch you into a new version of yourself. They may ignite your purpose, awaken your potential, or teach you what standards you should never lower again. And in that way, alignment still existed, it still mattered, it still changed you. But when timing, growth, and mutual desire do align, something rare happens. You no longer question whether you are chasing something hollow. You feel anchored, you feel stretched, but safe, challenged, but supported, and you start to build. Not just emotionally, but practically. You work together, you communicate clearly, you commit without manipulation. That's what alignment looks like in real life. Not a fantasy, but a function. A function of maturity, timing, and shared readiness. So, if you find yourself drawn towards someone and it doesn't feel chaotic, but it also doesn't feel ordinary, if their presence makes you think deeper, live better, and dream bigger, don't ignore it, but also don't idolize it. Study it, honor it, and ask yourself if your life is in a place where you can meet that connection with the seriousness it deserves. Because if it is, then you've likely stumbled into something rare, something that's not just about desire or coincidence, but divine timing, a moment when your path and someone else's align not to complete each other, but to walk alongside each other, stronger than either would be alone. And that kind of alignment doesn't just change your relationship status. It changes your life. It shifts the way you love, the way you grow, and the way you show up in the world. It gives you a glimpse of what is possible when two people commit to walking in the same direction. Not perfectly, not easily, but intentionally. And in that intention, you'll find more than love. You'll find purpose. And purpose, when shared, becomes one of the most powerful forces you'll ever encounter. You are not just a physical being operating in a vacuum. You are psychological, emotional, intuitive, wired for awareness that often exceeds the rational. There are mechanisms within you, evolved and ancient, capable of detecting what seems irrational. But what if they aren't irrational at all? What if they're signals, subtle, strange, but undeniable, that someone, somewhere is thinking about you? Most people walk through life deaf to the whispers of the subconscious. They dismiss the invisible forces that stir in the quiet moments. But you know better, because you've felt it. Suddenly, inexplicably, you're thinking of someone you haven't seen in years. Your chest tightens, their name echoes through your mind out of nowhere, and you ask yourself, why now? That question matters more than you realize. We are relational creatures, wired for connection, resonance, and emotional entanglement. When someone is fixated on you, mentally or emotionally, the impact can ripple across time and space, not through some magical fantasy, but through neurological pathways, psychological conditioning, and yes, intuitive resonance. You pick up on it, whether you're ready to admit it or not, because attention leaves fingerprints. It doesn't just stay in their mind, it reaches into yours, and it's strange how it shows up. It might be a dream, not just any dream, but one so vivid and emotionally charged it wakes you up breathless. And the strange part? It's not random. It's them. They're there. Their voice, their presence, their emotion. And somehow it feels real. More real than most of your waking life. This is not coincidence. This is a psychic echo, a reflection of someone thinking of you so intently that your mind begins to mirror it. Maybe it's not a dream. Maybe it's that sudden wave of anxiety that strikes you for no reason. You're fine, nothing happened. And then your chest tightens, your heart races, and your mind flashes to them, the person you're not in touch with, not even supposed to care about. But it happens anyway. Why? Because emotion is not always internal. Sometimes you're feeling what someone else is sending. We like to pretend we're autonomous machines, unaffected by the invisible thoughts of others, but we are not. We are wired for empathy. Mirror neurons fire not only when we act, but when we observe. What happens when someone is obsessing over you, playing out conversations, arguments, regrets in their mind? Their focus has a gravitational pull, and sometimes you feel its weight. Then there are the synchronicities, the uncanny timing of events. You think about them in the morning, and they text that evening. You hear their name in a song playing in a cafe you randomly walked into, or someone says something they used to say in their tone with their exact phrasing, and you freeze. Not because of the coincidence, but because it means something. It points to a tether that hasn't been severed. But here's the thing. You must not ignore it. Dismissing these signs is easy, safer, rational, logical. But in doing so, you disconnect from a deep well of awareness, the part of you that knows without knowing why, that picks up on subtleties that logic misses, that understands when someone is thinking about you deeply, it often leaves clues. You are not made to live numbed out, dulled by surface level noise. You were made to feel, to sense, to respond. You were built for connection, but that doesn't mean you should be vulnerable to every thought cast your way. The first step is awareness, to notice the weird signs, to take note of the shifts in your mental and emotional weather. That's how you protect yourself, but also how you learn who is still connected to you, who hasn't let go, who might be sending signals they can't even admit to themselves. But be warned, not all attention is good attention. Someone thinking of you does not always come from love or admiration. Sometimes it comes from regret, from guilt, from obsession, and other times from unresolved conflict. But all of it matters, because your peace can be affected by what someone else carries in their heart about you. So when the signs appear, don't run, don't numb, don't call yourself crazy. Observe, reflect, Become a student of your own experience. Your internal compass knows more than your intellect is willing to admit. And it's time to trust it. Not to become superstitious, but to become awake, aware, grounded. Because in that awareness, you'd reclaim the power to understand what your body and soul already know. When someone is thinking about you intensely, it's rarely hidden. It leaks out in dreams, in energy, in symbols, in emotion. And if you learn to read those signals, you don't just gain insight into them, you gain mastery over your own inner world. You step into the role of observer, interpreter, sovereign. Because these weird signs aren't just curiosities, they're messages, and it's your job to listen. You've probably felt it before, that strange tug in your chest, that sudden awareness of someone you haven't seen in months, maybe even years. There's no text, no call, no obvious trigger, just a quiet whisper in your soul that says, they're thinking about you. And you can't explain it. You try to shake it off, rationalize it, distract yourself, but the sensation lingers. You feel watched, remembered, connected. And though it sounds irrational, it's anything but. You are responding to something real, something ancient, something deeply human. The subtle language of energy and presence. This is not about fantasy. It's not about wistful thinking or baseless superstition. It's about the truth of who we are. We are not isolated creatures. We are relational by nature, wired for emotional resonance and intuitive awareness. Our biology, our neurology, and our psychology were not designed in a vacuum. We evolved in communities, tribes, and families. Connection is not optional. It is fundamental. And because of that, we are built to feel one another, even in silence, even across distance, even when words are never exchanged. You are not simply a machine of flesh and logic. You are a deeply sensitive antenna, constantly receiving signals, spoken and unspoken. When someone thinks about you with focus, with emotion, with longing or regret or curiosity, they are generating a real, measurable force. Their attention carries weight. It's not just metaphorical. The human brain, when focused on a particular person or idea, creates a cascade of electrical and emotional energy. And that energy can echo. That energy can be felt. Because attention is not passive, it is active. It directs energy. It creates impact. You feel this in everyday life more often than you admit. You walk into a room and immediately sense that someone has been talking about you. Nothing is said, but the air is different. Their posture shifts. Their glance lingers too long or looks away too quickly. You know. And you don't know how you know, but you do. That's your intuition. That's the subtle language of presence at work. And when someone is thinking about you from afar with emotional intensity, it functions in the same way. You feel it in your body, in your mood, in your thoughts, not as an idea, but as a physical experience. People often ignore these sensations because they fear appearing irrational. They're afraid to trust their internal compass. But what they forget is that intuition isn't guesswork. It's pattern recognition at a subconscious level. It's your mind processing hundreds of subtle cues, body language, emotional residue, energetic shifts, and delivering a conclusion before your rational mind can catch up. When someone is thinking about you deeply, when their energy is directed at you with intensity, your subconscious picks up on it long before your logic can explain it. And so you dream about them. You wake up feeling their presence like they were just there beside you. You hear their name repeatedly, not because the world suddenly started mentioning them more, but because your awareness is picking up on symbolic echoes. You feel unsettled or euphoric or nostalgic. And you can't trace it to anything in your immediate environment. That's not random. That's your emotional radar, reacting to a signal that originated beyond your conscious awareness. There's a reason this happens more with people you've had deep emotional connections with. The stronger the emotional tie, the deeper the imprint. Emotional bonds don't vanish when the relationship ends. They linger. They leave energetic residue. And when someone activates those old emotions by thinking of you, whether with love, anger, regret, or longing, that emotional charge resonates again. It vibrates in your nervous system. It touches the stored memories, the subconscious blueprints of connection, and it awakens them. Now, this isn't something you need to act on every time. You don't need to call them, message them, or validate the experience with external confirmation. That's not the point. The point is to notice, to recognize that your inner world is that when someone is focused on you, even silently, it leaves a trace. It leaves a sensation. And if you learn to pay attention to it, you develop a kind of internal fluency, a sensitivity that can help you navigate relationships with greater awareness and discernment. This sensitivity doesn't make you weak, it makes you aware. And in a world that tries to dull your instincts and drown your intuition in noise and distraction, awareness is power. Because when you know someone is thinking about you, when you can feel it without needing proof, you become less reactive and more grounded. You don't chase every thought or doubt your instincts. You simply acknowledge the presence. You observe the sensation, and you decide with clarity whether it means anything for your life or your path. Sometimes it will mean closure is needed. Sometimes it will remind you that you still have emotional work to do. And other times it will be a comforting confirmation that you are not forgotten. But what it should never be is dismissed. Because these subtle moments of emotional resonance are part of what make you human. They are your connection to the invisible threads that tie people together, even in silence. You felt it, you've experienced that quiet certainty that someone is thinking of you. Now it's time to trust that experience, not as a distraction, but as a deeper level of understanding. Your awareness is not lying to you, it's inviting you to wake up, to feel more, to know more, to see beyond the surface. And when you do, you realize presence is not just physical, energy is not just abstract, and being thought of is not just poetic, it's real. You can feel it. You always could. There are moments in your day when someone suddenly invades your thoughts. You weren't thinking about them. You weren't reminded of them by a place, a sound, a name, or a memory, yet there they are. Clear, vivid, and emotionally charged. It might be someone from your past, someone you've tried to forget, or someone you thought you'd moved on from. Their presence in your mind feels so intrusive that you pause and wonder, why now? And more importantly, what does this mean? The mind is not a closed system. It doesn't operate in isolation from the emotional landscape you live in. Your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions. They don't just belong to you. They are shaped, influenced, and sometimes triggered by forces you can't always see. When you keep thinking about someone without reason, especially someone you haven't spoken to or seen in a long time, it may be more than just a coincidence or a random mental glitch. It could be the psychological echo of that person thinking about you. Psychological echoes are real. They're the result of deep emotional bonds, unresolved connections, or lingering emotional impressions that have embedded themselves into your subconscious. You and the people you've had meaningful interactions with don't just walk away untouched. You leave mental footprints on each other, patterns, associations, emotions, and memories. And these can be reactivated without conscious effort. If someone is thinking about you with intensity, whether it's longing, guilt, love, or regret, it can create a kind of ripple effect. That ripple doesn't just stay in their mind. It reaches out, it vibrates through the emotional field that once connected you. This doesn't mean that every random thought is a signal, but when you experience persistent thoughts about someone, and those thoughts are uninvited and emotionally charged, you have to pause and ask yourself why. The brain doesn't waste energy without cause. It is always reacting to stimuli, even stimuli it can't see. When your mind starts bringing someone into focus again and again, when dreams begin repeating, when memories begin looping, there is often a reason. Something in your psyche is responding to an energetic or emotional trigger. And more often than not, it's because that person is directing attention toward you, even unconsciously. We tend to believe that communication only happens through words or actions. But human connection runs deeper than that. Communication often begins in silence. It begins with thought, with memory, with feeling. If someone is mentally fixated on you, they are reliving conversations, imagining outcomes, rehearsing apologies or confession, and those mental actions are not inert. They are emotionally charged mental rehearsals that awaken the emotional bond between you. That bond might be dormant, but it's not gone, and it begins to stir. You pick up on it, not through your five senses, but through emotional and psychological resonance. You've likely experienced this in reverse as well. You think intensely about someone, and within hours or days, they reach out, they call, they message, they mention they were just thinking about you too. And both of you are caught in that strange realization that somehow, on some level, you were connected, aha, without planning it. That's the psychological echo at work. That's the mind registering emotional energy and interpreting it as a thought, a memory, or a sensation. You may also notice that your thoughts about someone are not just persistent, they carry weight. You try to ignore them, but they push through. They hijack your mental space. And the emotional tone matters here. Are you feeling their sorrow, their confusion, their longing? Do you feel anxious without cause, only to realize your thoughts keep returning to them? These emotional shifts are often clues that what you're feeling isn't entirely yours. You are absorbing psychological tension being projected toward you. Now, this doesn't mean you're a passive receiver. It doesn't mean you're powerless to this process. Quite the opposite. The goal is not to obsess over who might be thinking about you. The goal is to become aware so that you can differentiate between your true emotional state and what might be imposed upon you by unresolved connections or others' mental focus. When you understand that your mind can echo the thoughts and feelings of someone else, you begin to see your thoughts not as isolated experiences, but as part of a larger emotional network. This awareness gives you power, gives you insight. It gives you the ability to step back and ask, is this thought mine, or is it a reflection of someone else's emotional energy? That question alone can change the way you respond to sudden emotional shifts. You stop blaming yourself for feeling things you can't explain. You stop trying to rationalize every thought. You begin to observe, reflect, and gain clarity. There's a reason your mind keeps circling back to certain people. There's a reason why some individuals leave such a deep imprint. They may be thinking of you. They may be holding emotional space for you, consciously or unconsciously. And your mind, especially when you are still emotionally linked to them, react. It sends up the signal. It brings their image to the forefront, not to torture you, not to confuse you, but to alert you. There is unfinished emotional business. There is mental and emotional attention being directed your way. You don't need to act on every echo. You don't need to respond or reach out. What you need is to notice. To learn the difference between a memory and a message.